What if I told you that signing Kyle Tucker isn't just about adding one superstar? It's about triggering a chain reaction that could completely reshape the Toronto Blue Jays roster and turn their redundant pieces into championship assets. Everyone's been focused on whether Toronto can land Tucker, whether they'll outbid the Mets, whether they'll pivot to Bo Bichette or Alex Bregman. But here's what nobody's talking about: the nuclear-level trade market that's heating up right now, and how the Blue Jays could exploit it to build something truly special. According to fan-sided MLB insider Robert Murray, Toronto has become one of the most desirable destinations in baseball. CEO Mark Shapiro just went on record saying they're not done, not even close, and they need to get better to compete in what he called an absolute beast of a division. And now, a new report from Bob Nightingale reveals that the trade market for outfielders is absolutely on fire, with the Chicago White Sox fielding multiple offers for Luis Robert. Why does that matter? Because if Toronto lands Tucker, they suddenly have a surplus of talented outfielders who could fetch significant returns in trades. We're not talking about dumping salary. We're talking about turning redundant roster pieces into pitching depth, bullpen arms, or whatever else they need to push them over the championship hump. This isn't just a free agency story anymore. This is a masterclass in roster construction, and the Blue Jays might be about to show everyone how it's done. Let's start with the centerpiece of this entire operation: Kyle Tucker. The Blue Jays have been linked to Tucker for weeks now, and for good reason. He's a 28-year-old five-tool superstar entering his prime, coming off a season where he slashed .289/.408/.585 with 23 home runs in just 78 games. He's a Gold Glove caliber defender, a legitimate 30-30 threat when healthy, and exactly the kind of impact that transforms good lineups into elite ones. But here's what makes this situation fascinating. If Toronto signs Tucker, they don't just add a superstar, they create a roster logjam that could actually work in their favor. Think about Toronto's current outfield situation. George Springer is locked into the DH spot, taking up all those at-bats. Dalton Varsho is the starting center fielder and isn't going anywhere. If Tucker signs, he immediately slots into right field, which means Anthony Santander, who the Blue Jays just brought in, suddenly becomes expendable. And that's where things get really interesting. Fansided's Brandon Glick broke down the implications brilliantly, with George Springer taking up all of the at-bats at DH and Dalton Varsho locked into the starting spot in center field. Tucker's presence would effectively mean that there's one open spot for all of the aforementioned players. Translation: Toronto would have quality major league outfielders with nowhere to play. Normally, that's a problem. But in the current trade market, that's an opportunity. Bob Nightingale just reported that the Chicago White Sox are actively shopping Luis Robert and finding serious interest from multiple teams, including the New York Mets and Cincinnati Reds. Robert is a talented center fielder, but he's also injury-prone and inconsistent. If teams are willing to engage in serious trade talks for Robert, what does that tell you about the market for outfielders right now? It tells you there's demand. Serious demand. And Toronto could capitalize on that in a major way. Let's talk about what the Blue Jays could actually extract in trades if they land Tucker and suddenly have surplus outfield talent. Glick makes a compelling point. There's clearly a path here for the Blue Jays to extract some value for superfluous talent. If Luis Robert can still draw trade interest in 2025, so too can all of Toronto's reserves. Think about what that means. Anthony Santander isn't some aging veteran on a bad contract. He's a productive major league hitter who can play multiple outfield positions and provide power in the middle of a lineup. If the Blue Jays decide he's redundant after signing Tucker, they could shop him to teams desperate for outfield help and get back legitimate assets. What kind of assets? Pitching depth for starters. Toronto's rotation is solid, but you can never have too much pitching, especially in a division as brutal as the AL East. If they could flip Santander or another outfielder for a quality starter or a couple of high-upside arms, that's a win. Bullpen help is another obvious target. The Blue Jays' relief core has been inconsistent, and adding a shutdown late-inning arm could be the difference between winning and losing close playoff games. If there's a team out there with bullpen depth, but outfield needs, Toronto could engineer a swap that addresses both teams' weaknesses. Prospect capital is the third option, and it might be the smartest play. If the Blue Jays can turn redundant major league talent into high-ceiling prospects, they're not just improving the 2026 roster, they're building sustained success for years to come. The key insight here is that the trade market is hot right now. Teams are aggressive. Front offices are willing to make bold moves. And Toronto is positioned perfectly to take advantage of that environment if they execute their plan correctly. But here's the twist that nobody saw coming. While everyone's been focused on Kyle Tucker, there's another fascinating subplot developing. The Bo Bichette situation, and whether the Blue Jays' rumored interest in Alex Bregman is genuine or just strategic posturing. Robert Murray dropped a bombshell during his recent appearance on the Foul Territory show. He confirmed that Bichette returning to Toronto in 2026 and beyond is very much on the table, and that Tucker is still in play for the Jays this offseason. But he threw cold water on the idea that Toronto could sign both Tucker and Bichette to massive nine-figure deals. I am seeing the buzz from other insiders that they could add both. That to me feels like a lot. I don't know if they could end up pulling something like that off, Murray said, but here's where it gets really interesting. Murray suggested that the recent rumblings about Toronto's interest in Alex Bregman might be more about leverage than genuine pursuit. Could the Blue Jays be using Bregman rumors to push Bichette into signing a new long-term deal at a more team-friendly number? It's a classic negotiating tactic. You let it leak that you're interested in a comparable player, in this case, Bregman, a proven winner with championship pedigree, and suddenly your homegrown star realizes he might not be as irreplaceable as he thought. The pressure mounts, the urgency increases, and maybe, just maybe, Bichette becomes more willing to negotiate. Bregman brings a lot to the table. 2 World Series rings, a career .272/.366/.483/line, and the kind of postseason experience that's invaluable in October. He's a third baseman who plays with an edge and thrives under pressure. But he's also going to command a massive contract, and Toronto might not have the financial flexibility to sign both him and Tucker. So, if the Bregman rumors are just leverage to get Bichette signed, that's actually brilliant front office work. You create urgency, you establish market value, and you potentially lock up your homegrown star at a discount compared to what you'd pay for Bregman on the open market. Murray's conclusion is telling. Either way, if the club does something, it will likely be one big move instead of 2 huge free agent signings. One big move, not 2. That's the key takeaway. Toronto is going to make a splash, but they're going to be strategic about it, not reckless. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. The AL East is an absolute nightmare, and it's getting worse by the day. Blue Jays CEO Mark Shapiro went on MLB Network Radio and didn't mince words about the competitive reality his team faces. My philosophy on free agents is there is no such thing as close. You either are done or you're not done. There is nothing in between. We are still working to get better. This is the bottom line. Our division is an absolute beast. He continued, you can talk about what I've experienced in 34 years, almost 35 in the game, and one thing that has cleared me is there is nothing like the AL East. The bottom line, to answer your question, we need to get better. That's not corporate speak. That's a CEO acknowledging that standing pat is organizational suicide. The Baltimore Orioles just landed Pete Alonso, adding another massive bat to a lineup that's already loaded with young talent. The New York Yankees are always dangerous. The Tampa Bay Rays continue to overachieve despite their payroll limitations. And the Boston Red Sox are lurking, always 1 or 2 moves away from contention. Toronto just reached Game 7 of the World Series and lost to the defending champion Los Angeles Dodgers. They were this close to glory, but close doesn't cut it in the AL East. Close gets you a participation trophy and a winter full of regret. That's why Shapiro's comments matter. He's signaling to the fan base, to the players, and to the rest of baseball that Toronto isn't satisfied with last season's success. They're hungry, they're aggressive, and they're willing to spend whatever it takes to get over the hump. The question is whether they can execute that vision without mortgaging their future or creating roster imbalances that hurt them down the line. So, let's put all the pieces together and see what Toronto's master plan might actually look like. Step 1. Sign Kyle Tucker to a massive contract, probably in the $400 to $430 million range over 10 to 11 years. This gives them the elite 5-tool outfielder they desperately need and immediately upgrades their lineup. Step 2. Use the resulting roster surplus to make strategic trades. Shop Anthony Santander or other redundant pieces to teams desperate for outfield help. Target pitching depth, bullpen arms, or high-ceiling prospects in return. Step 3. Resolve the Bo Bichette situation. Either sign him to a long-term extension at a team-friendly number using the Bregman leverage to negotiate, or let him walk and reallocate those resources elsewhere. Step 4. Make additional moves to address remaining needs. Whether that's bullpen depth, catching upgrades, or bench pieces, Toronto has shown they're willing to be active throughout the offseason. The beauty of this plan is its flexibility. If they land Tucker, they have options. If they miss on Tucker but sign Bichette, they still improve. If they pivot to Bregman instead, they get championship experience and infield stability. There are multiple paths to success, and Toronto seems prepared to pursue whichever one makes the most sense. But here's the critical insight that ties everything together. The trade market is hot right now, and Toronto is positioned to exploit it. If Luis Robert can draw serious interest despite his injury history and inconsistency, then quality major league players like Santander should absolutely be able to fetch significant returns. That's the genius of this approach. You're not just adding talent through free agency, you're creating a roster surplus that you can then flip into additional assets. You're building depth, flexibility, and championship upside all at once. So here's where we stand, folks. The Toronto Blue Jays are operating on multiple levels right now, playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. They're pursuing Kyle Tucker aggressively, positioning themselves as one of the frontrunners in the sweepstakes. They're using Alex Bregman rumors to create leverage in Bo Bichette negotiations. They're monitoring the trade market and recognizing that if they land Tucker, they can flip redundant pieces into valuable assets. And they're doing all of this while CEO Mark Shapiro publicly declares that the team needs to get better to compete in the AL East. This isn't desperation. This is calculated aggression. This is a front office that understands their championship window is open right now, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to maximize it. The Luis Robert trade rumors are a canary in the coal mine, signaling that the outfield market is hot and teams are willing to pay for quality players. If Toronto lands Tucker and suddenly has surplus talent, they're positioned perfectly to capitalize on that demand and turn redundant roster pieces into championship assets. Whether it's Tucker, Bichette, Bregman, or some combination we haven't even considered yet, one thing is crystal clear. The Blue Jays are going to make major moves this offseason. Mark Shapiro said it himself, there's no such thing as close. You're either done or you're not done, and Toronto is definitely not done. The question isn't whether they'll make a splash. The question is whether that splash will be big enough, smart enough, and strategic enough to push them over the championship hump and deliver Toronto its first World Series title in over 3 decades. If you think the Blue Jays are about to pull off the most brilliant roster construction move of the offseason, or if you believe they're overthinking this and should just go all in on Tucker regardless of the consequences, I need to hear your take in the comments right now. Should Toronto prioritize Tucker and then make trades, or should they spread their resources across multiple signings? Drop your thoughts below. And if this breakdown opened your eyes to the chess match happening behind the scenes, hit that like button and subscribe, because we're tracking every move the Blue Jays make this offseason. This is just the beginning, and the next few weeks are going to be absolutely wild.